Hey guys, welcome to your first video lesson of the year. Remember, these are self-paced videos, so you may pause, rewind as needed. If you have a printer at home, you could absolutely print off this document. You'll find this document in Schoology. You can print it off and fill it out with us, or if you don't have a printer at home, one of two things. You can either just grab a piece of paper, write down what you see here. That's totally fine. These are your notes. Or if you do have an iPad or something along those lines and an iPad pencil, you can kind of do what I'm doing right now, which is just taking notes on the iPad itself. Okay? All right, so we are going to start off the year. We're doing some algebra review, okay? So you have seen this content before, but it doesn't help to review and practice a little bit before we begin learning the new stuff. All right, so before we start working on these problems up here, I do want to review something, order of operations. So when we are approaching an expression or equation, we want to follow order of operations. And one method for remembering, PEMDAS. Okay, so the P stands for parentheses and grouping symbols. E is for exponents. Then we have multiply and divide, and then add and subtract. Notice on multiply and divide and add and subtract, you're doing that from left to right. Okay, so multiply doesn't trump divide, divide does not trump multiply. Instead, okay, for example, if you're reading your equation or expression and you see that from left to right, the division sign is before the multiplication sign, then divide first, okay? All right, so let's do some of these problems up here. All right. First off, read the directions always. Think, what am I trying to do here? We see the word solve. So what does that mean for us? Well, first off, we want an equal sign, okay? And our final answer. What do we need to find to be equal to? Well, that depends on what variable you're given. So notice on number 1, we see an x. So if you see in the direction solve, you want what x is equal to, okay? So that is our goal here. So we want to isolate the x, get it all by itself. So we're going to try to move everything else away from it. Okay. So we see here on the right-hand side of the equation a 3 and a -2. You've probably heard the phrase before, combine like terms. So notice I'm just combining the numbers. If we had multiple variables, look at number 2. I see I have an m here. I see I have an m here and an m here, so I would combine those. Okay, so 3 and a -2, or in other words, 3 minus 2 is +1. And I'm still left with that -3x, the -3x, and 10 on the left. All right, I still want to get my x all by itself, so I'm going to remove this, or get this 1 away from it. Remember, to move something to the other side of an equal sign, we have to do the opposite. So this is a +1. So to move it over, we are going to subtract 1. And that will help us cancel that out. Okay. So 10 minus 1 is 9. So now we have 9 equals -3x. All right, last thing we got to do to get x all by itself, we see it's being multiplied to this -3 in front. So do the opposite. We're going to divide by -3. Okay. Those that -3 and -3 will cancel out. Why is that? Well, -3 divided by -3 is just a 1, right? And so essentially what we're saying here is when we divide -3 and -3, we get 1. Well, 1 times x is just x, okay? So that is how we get it all by itself. All right, I'm just going to delete that. Don't want to go into the next problem. Okay. All right, so when we do that, well, we're left with x all by itself on the right-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, 9 divided by -3 is -3. So x equals -3. Notice I did switch those around, so technically in the order we had it, this is what we would have gotten, but it is proper to put your variable first when writing an equation. All right. All right, number 2. We, again, combine like terms, so 3m plus 4m will get us 7. Whoa, weird 7. 7m. And then much like we just did, if we want to get the m all by itself, do the opposite. So m is being multiplied to 7, so divide by 7. Okay, 7 divided by 7 is 1, so that just cancels out. So m equals 14 divided by 7. Well, 14 divided by 7 is 2. All right, number 3. I do recommend, guys, throughout this video, if you feel like you got something, pause it, try the problem yourself first, and then see if you get what I get. That's something I'll suggest in any video that we do. All right, number 3. So let's see, we want to get y all by itself. I noticed that my 13y and 8y are on opposite sides of the equal sign, so I want to combine those like terms. So I'm just going to move over my 8y by doing the opposite. So since it's positive 8y, I'm going to subtract 8y to move it over. That cancels out over here. 13 minus 8 gives us 5y. All right, and then we want to get everything away from this y, so I'm going to move over my 48 to the other side by subtracting. Okay, so those 48s cancel out, and I'm left with just 5y equals. On the other side, I have negative 47 minus 48, and that'll give me negative 95. All right, and then last but not least, make sure to get the y by itself. So we're going to divide by 5. The 5's cancel out, and we get y equals, well, negative 95 divided by 5 gives us negative 19. All right, okay, number 4. We do see parentheses here, so we do want to look inside the parentheses and make sure that there's nothing that can be done there. 2x minus 4, well, there's nothing to combine or anything, so that'll stay as is. And same with the negative 2x plus 9. There's nothing we can combine, so it'll stay as is. So next on order of operations is the exponents. Well, we don't have any exponents, so moving on. Multiply and divide. Okay, so what that tells us is even though you see, for instance, right here, plus 1, okay, that does not mean you're going to add 9 and 1 first. No, no, no. Okay, what we want to do is do any multiplication or division first. So as I read left to right, notice negative 7 is right here. Yes, you do have to take into account that minus sign in front of the 7. So what we're going to do is we're going to take negative 7. It is being multiplied to this entire set of parentheses, 2x minus 4. And so we are going to distribute the negative 7 to both of these terms. Okay. So we have 3x still hanging out in front. Negative 7 times 2x will give us negative 14x. Negative 7 times negative 4 will give us a positive 28. All right, now for the other side of the equal sign, we see here a 3 being multiplied out in front, so we're going to distribute that to both of these terms. So 3 times negative 2x is negative 6x. 3 times 9 will give us 27. And at the end, we still have our plus 1. All right, so now we're going to combine like terms, just as we've been doing. 3x minus 14x, that's going to give us a negative 11x, plus 28 still. Negative 6x plus 27 plus 1, well, we're going to combine 27 and 1. Now I want to try to get, oops, and I left off my x over here, so make sure to have that next to the 11. I'm going to combine my x's, get them on one side of the equal sign. So I will go ahead and do that by adding 6x over. Well, negative 11 plus 6 is negative 5. Plus, then I'm going to actually move over my 28 as well. okay? So if I also subtract 28 and right, because we're going to do the opposite, so plus 28, to move it to the other side is a minus 28. Okay, well notice 28 minus 28 just cancels out, that's just 0. 28 minus 28 is also 0. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we're just left with this 5x. Okay, plus 0, well, that goes away. Equals, we've already canceled out the x's over here. And 28, again, minus 28 is just 0. Okay, so negative 5x equals 0. Well, to find x, divide by negative 5, and we get x equals 0 divided by negative 5 is just 0. All right, and there's our answer. Okay, number 5, a dog kennel owner has 100 feet of fencing. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Has 100 feet of fencing to enclose a rectangular dog run. She wants it to be, and that should say 4 times as long as it is wide. Find the dimensions. Okay, so we want to, first off, when it says find the dimensions, what is it asking us to find? We want to find length and width, okay? Next, let's pick out the important pieces of information. We have 100 feet of fencing, okay? Here, I'll actually do that in red. 100 feet of fencing, okay? And she wants it to be 4 times as long as it is wide. Okay, so here are the important pieces of information. All right. Okay, sorry, my dogs are in the background. Okay, so if we want it to be, first off, if she has 100 feet of fencing, okay, we know that no matter what our dimensions are, it should equal up to 100. Okay, so for now, I'm going to go ahead. Actually, scratch that. Okay, so we know, let's go to the second piece of information. We know she wants it to be 4 times as long, okay, as it is wide. So when we read that, okay, she's saying she wants the length to be 4 times as long as the width, okay? So if we take our width and we multiply it by 4, that should be equal to the length, okay? So the length is equal to 4 times the width. All right, now we know that the fencing will add up to 100 feet, okay? So if we want to think about a fence, right? It's the perimeter around something. So we're talking perimeter here. Well, a perimeter has, think about okay, let's say that's our fence. A perimeter has 2 lengths and 2 widths, okay? So if I add all of that together, it should equal 100, okay? So I'm gonna do that. Length plus width equals 100. All right. Well, we know that the length is equal to 4W, as we've already said, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, because right now there's not enough information here to find out what L or W would be, okay? We have 2 variables and not enough info. But knowing that the length is equal to 4W, we can replace these L's with the 4W, okay? So now instead of L, I'm gonna write 4W. Okay, and then we still have plus W equals 100. All right, so now notice that we have only W's as our variables, so we can combine all of these like terms. So 4W plus 4W plus 1W plus 1W will give us 10W. And now notice this is something we definitely know how to do. So we want W by itself, divide by 10 on both sides, and we get W equals 100 divided by 10, which is 10. All right. Now, in word problems, you must include your labels. Yes, we will take off if you do not. So if we have width, well, first let's look at our paragraph. It says feet. Okay, so our width is 10 feet. Okay, but you need both dimensions, so the length as well. Well, we know the length is equal to 4 times W. We just found W to be 10. So instead of writing W, I'm going to write what we know W is equal to. Well, 4 times 10 is 40. So the length is 40 feet. All right, and we have found our dimensions. Now, how can you know that you're correct? Even thinking back to 1 through 4, how do you know that what you got is right? Well, what you just solved for was a variable. Okay, so think back to your original equation, plug in that variable and see if you get a true statement. Okay, so if we plug in 10 for our W's here, and we plug in 40 into our lengths here, well, 40 plus 10 plus 10, that indeed does equal 100. So we're good to go. I always recommend, if you have time on quizzes and tests, checking your work. All right, number 6, find 3 consecutive integers whose sum is 20. What am I saying? Whose sum is 66. Okay, so when we say consecutive integers, okay, what we're talking about is, for example, 1, 2, 3, okay, or 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. Okay, so we want to find 3 numbers that are consecutive, and that will add up to 66. Could you play a guess and check game? Sure, but that's going to take a very long time. So how can we do this more quickly? All right, well, we know that they have to be consecutive. So let's just call the first number, we don't know what it is, let's just call it something, okay? Let's call it X, all right? So X is going to be our very first number. So if X is our first number, oopsies. Sorry, guys, having trouble with my pen here. Okay, if X is our very first number, well, what's the next consecutive number? Think back to here. 1. Well, what's the next consecutive number? That would just be 2. You just need to add 1 onto it. Then you add another 1, and you get 3. Okay, so our next consecutive number would be whatever X was plus 1. And the next one after that would be whatever X was, but plus 2. Okay, so if we add these 3 numbers up, which we don't know what they are yet, they should equal 66. So let's do that. We have X. We're going to add that to whatever this number is, X plus 1. We're going to add that to the third consecutive number, which is X plus 2. Okay, and we know that these 3 numbers, okay, this being 1, 2, 3, should add up to 66. All right, and now this is something that we definitely can work with. Let's combine like terms. We have 3 X's. So we have 3x plus, notice we have here 1 and a 2, so we have plus 3 equals 66. Okay, go ahead and solve for x. So we subtract 3, we get 3x equals 66 minus 3 is 63. And then divide by 3, and we're going to get x equals 21. All right, so what that means is over here, what you just found is x equals 21. Okay, but you need to find all 3 numbers, redirection. So it's not enough to just say 21. Okay, so the next number would be 22. Okay, the next number would be, well, 21 plus 2 is 23. And there's your 3 consecutive numbers. All right, let's go on to the next page. Okay, so evaluate each. We're definitely going to see more order of operations happening in these problems. All right, so number 7, think first PEMDAS, so parentheses first. So we want to add what is inside this guy. Okay, well, before we can add this, we need to actually figure out what 3 squared is. So 3 squared is 9. So we have 6 on the outside still, 1 plus 9. Well, 1 plus 9 is 10. Okay. Parentheses mean multiply, so 6 times 10, we get 60. All right, number 8. Think PEMDAS. So first, before addition, does come division. So 18 divided by 6 comes first. That is 3. You still have the 3 hanging out in front. All right, so 3 plus 3, you get 6. All right, number 9. As I'm reading left to right, I see parentheses, but nothing's really happening. It's just a minus 4 in there. So we don't need to do much with that. I don't see any exponents, but I do see a division sign. Okay, so 14 divided by 7 is 2. All right, and then we still have negative 4 minus, in parentheses, negative 4. And whoopsies, I should have left more room, plus 2. All right. So now let's go ahead and figure out we just see all subtraction and addition now. So as I'm reading left to right, I have negative 4 minus a negative 4. Okay, if you remember, 2 negatives make a positive. So this right here will turn into a plus 4. All right. And then negative 4 plus 4 is 0, plus 2. We get 2. All right, number 10. So reading left to right, again, guys, as a reminder, I do highly recommend that you try these on your own and just check with me. This is a part of the video where maybe you've got this down already and you can just fast forward, okay? That is okay. All right, so we have, as we're reading left to right, I see I have multiplication here. I will do that before doing that division at the end. So 50 minus 30 times 2 is 60. Okay, and then notice I'm just leaving everything else the same. Next comes the division. All right, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, and then everything else stays the same. All right, and then now I see I only have subtraction and addition left. So do it as you read left to right. 50 minus 60 is negative 10 plus 4. Negative 10 plus 4, we get negative 6. All right, last one of these. All right, so I don't see any parentheses, but I do see I have an exponent. Okay, so I'm going to do that first. I have 16 minus 2 squared is 4, plus 12 divided by 6 times 2. All right, so now comes multiplication and division. As I read left to right, I see first 12 divided by 6. Okay, so that leaves me with 16 minus 4 plus, well, 12 divided by 6 is 2. And then I still have the times 2 on the end. All right, so I have a multiplication happening here at the end. So I'm going to do that next. 16 minus 4 plus 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, so now I only have a subtraction addition left. Well, 16 minus 4 is going to give me 12 plus 4, 16. Or you could have seen that a minus 4 plus 4 will just cancel out, and so that just left us with 16. All right, guys. Okay, so last section, we're going to talk about evaluating functions. So a function really, first off, evaluating, that means we're going to get, what something is equal to, okay? And then functions are, you've actually already worked with a bunch. Linear functions, where you just have a line on the graph. Quadratic, where it makes the parabola, the U-shaped function. You have worked with exponentials before, and you may remember an M&M activity you did in your algebra class. So you definitely worked with these before. Okay, so function notation. Okay, that is where you see this f and what looks like to be times x. If you ever see this, guys, that is not times, okay? It instead means f of x, okay? And it's just kind of a fancy way for writing what we're used to being as y, okay? They mean the same thing. It's just a little more specific to the variable we're working with, because notice we're working with an x here, and that is why that's an x in the parentheses. Okay, evaluating functions. So to evaluate a function for a given x or just any variable, substitute the value in for x. Okay, so for example, notice where x once was up up here, okay, where x once was, there's now this 2. So that means where x once was, and here in this 5x plus 3 expression, instead of writing x, we're going to substitute it with the 2. Okay. All right, so let's try. We have a given function, f of x and g of x. It could say anything. It could say h of x, m of x, p of x, so on and so forth. All right, so make sure you are paying attention to which function we're working with. So notice it says f of 2. So we're going to be working with our f of x function. Okay, now notice where x once was, it has been replaced with a 2. So we are going to replace the x in our equation with a 2. All right, so that's going to give us f of 2 equals 2. Instead of writing x, I'm going to write 2. But everything else stays the same. All right, next we can actually evaluate. So guys, on the left-hand side, that just stays as is. That's always going to stay f of 2, or whatever number it could be. F of 2, f of -5, like number 13. What we're really evaluating is the right-hand side. So we see we have an exponent that comes before any of these other operations. So 2 squared is 4. Okay, and notice these parentheses here. Remember, parentheses are another way of saying multiply. So we are going to multiply this 4 to the 2 out in front. Okay, well, 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 3 will give us 5. So f of 2 equals 5. All right, number 13. Okay, we see we have a -5 in place of x. So f of -5 equals, we're working with the same equation as last example, but instead of replacing x with the 2, we're going to replace it with -5. All right, so same thing. Do your exponent first. -5 squared. Well, -5 times -5. Negative times negative always becomes positive. Okay, still multiplying by the 2 out in front. And we have 2 then times 25. That's 50. 50 minus 3 gets us 47. All right. Number 14, now notice it says g, so we're going to be working with our g of x function. Where x once was, we are now going to replace that with a 3. So g of 3 equals, the negative sign in front of the x stays the same. All you're doing is replacing the x and the x alone. Okay, so instead of writing this x, I'm just going to write the 3. Everything else is the same. All right, -3 plus 1 is going to give us -2. All right, number 15, same thing. Let's plug in -8 in for x. So we have the negative is still hanging out in front. Again, that negative doesn't change since it was already there. Okay, we're just changing the x. So a negative out in front. Now instead of writing x, I'm going to write a -8. Okay. I'll put parentheses around that so you can see that that's what I replaced x with. And then plus 1. Well, as always, a negative and a negative makes a positive. So this becomes a +8 plus 1. And so g of -8 equals 9. All right, number 16, f of 3y. Okay, nothing changes. That just means in place of x, we're going to put a 3y. All right, so f of 3y. Don't let the fact that there's an extra variable trip you up. Just do the same thing we've been doing. All right, we have 2. In place of that x, okay, we're going to put that 3y. I'll put parentheses around it so you can see exactly where I've replaced the x. Everything else stays the same, so I'm still going to square that and subtract 3 at the end. All right, so order of operations tells us that first comes the exponent here. 3y times 3y is what this is saying. Okay, you don't have to write this out when you're showing your work, but just for those of us that maybe want to see this little extra step. Okay, so when we square something, that's what we're saying, multiply it to itself. Well, 3y times 3y, multiply your numbers. 3 times 3 is 9, and don't forget to multiply your variables as well. Y times y is y squared. Okay, that's probably the mistake I see most on these problems is people forget about squaring the variables too. All right, so there's 3y squared. We still have the 2 being multiplied out in front and the minus 3 on the end. Okay, now let's multiply by the 2. 2 times 9 is going to give us 18y squared. And then we have minus 3 on the end. And now looking at what we're left with, there's nothing we can combine. There's no like terms. So we are done here. There's nothing else to do. All right, last but not least, number 17. All right, so for g of x, we're going to replace the x with this 2a minus 7. Actually, sorry guys, I'm just going to, for extra room, just do it right here. Okay, so I have negative out in front still. I'm just replacing the x and the x alone. So where I'm replacing the x, I'm going to put the 2a minus 7. And then on the end, I still have plus 1. All right, so we have a negative being multiplied out in front. Do not forget to distribute this to both terms. I can't tell you how many times I see students write that this is the same as negative 2a minus 7. No, no, no. Okay, make sure that you multiply it to both. Okay, so negative times 2a. And guys, this is just a negative 1 here. Okay, so anytime you don't see that number written, it's just because there's a hidden 1. All right, so we have negative times 2a is negative 2a. Negative times negative 7, again, negative and negative makes a positive. So you can see why the previous answer I wrote down with the minus 7 is incorrect. All right, we still have the plus 1 hanging out on the end. So negative 2a, 7 and 1 combine like terms, so that would give us plus 8. Once again, there is nothing else we can combine or do, so we are done. All right, guys, so that is the end of the review lesson. We do have some problems that were announced to you guys. Please make sure that you do those. Those are also a part of your homework. All right, bye, guys.